Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. So we're on episodes 13, 13.5, and 14 of Kuroko's Basket. And yeah, so this is kind of a weird set of episodes. It's going to be the same when we get over to 22 and 22.5. But basically, I've noticed that after episode 13, there have been several comments where people are like, oh, there's an OVA that happens right after episode 13. You need to watch it as episode 13.5. And it's really weird. Like, Crunchyroll has the episode 22.5, and it's even in order with episode 22, but this one's not listed anywhere. I'm like, why? And so I went to go find it and found out it actually came out with the manga, and it was like a little extra OVA they tacked on with the manga, but it takes place right after the events of episode 13, apparently. And I did find a episode upload of it on Bilibili. So we're going to be watching episodes 13 and 14 on Crunchyroll, and I'm going to hop over to Bilibili to watch 13.5. But yeah, I'm pretty excited, although that makes me think we're going to round out this game in episode 13, and I'm actually terrified. Because it's like win or lose. They're either going to win the final in episode 13 of season 1, or they're going to lose and we got to start over from scratch, right? And then maybe, I don't know if it's going to be like Ace of the Diamond where we go to like the second year, like we just advance into the next year, or if we carry on the rest of this year practicing, getting ready for that, like what we're going to do. Are we going to win against Midorima? How? Him and Takao seem pretty strong. So there's lots of questions that I have going into this. And obviously, we're going to be watching 2 episodes in an OVA. Maybe we'll get answers. So I am really excited. I really love this series so far, and it's really kind of hooked me with just how much it sucks you into the characters and like the drama of it. But I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in episode 13 and then what this OVA has in store for us. We'll see, I guess, right? Although I've watched OVAs with like Yona the Dawn and they're amazing. So OVAs usually are a fun time, if anything. And it's right in between 2 episodes. So that'll be different. But it'll be a nice prep before we get to episodes 22 down the road. But anyway, I do have RGRYT had a big comment that I wanted to mention right before starting this. And because we're talking about like the Skittles and the Taste the Rainbow that is, you know, the Generation of Miracles. And I was like, it's kind of odd that Kuroko has blue hair when so does one character that has like the darker blue hair. And RG Wright actually said that Kuroko's hair is not really blue. It's a Japanese color called watercolor, and it's meant to be more like translucent. And I'm like, oh, so it's barely noticeable. It's like if you've ever used watercolor, the water of the watercolor, when you put it on the paper, it's translucent and you can see right through it. That's what Kuroko's hair is supposed to be, and it is kind of that like color of water on paper. I was like, brilliant, it's wonderful. And then also, RG had some really cool comments about how Sirens' names all have to do with days of the week. And I was like, oh, there's like a little part of the character with them that refers to a day of the week. So Hyuga, the Hugh, refers to the sun for Sunday. I was like, that's cool. I like it. Izuki, the Zuki is for Monday or moon. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. You got the sun and the moon with Hyuga and Izuki. Then Kagami, the Ka, refers to fire and Tuesday. Makes sense. Matobe, the me, means water or Wednesday, and Kagami and Matobe are polar opposite personalities, so that all checks out. The fourth, the Earth is like, oh, that's tied to Saturday. Let me get to my notes. There is no Thursday that was noted. There's no character that has a thing that's connected to Thursday or the wood kanji. So maybe if our crew like loses this season, this episode, and has to start over with a new crew, maybe there'll be a new first year come in that has a name that associates with Thursday. We'll see. And the Kagane ties to gold or metal for Friday. And Suchita or Suchi ties to Saturday, which is Earth. So I thought that was really cool. It's like all the siren people are days of the week. I'm like, that's really sweet. I like it. It has a very like One Piece vibe to it. Like it's Miss Sunday and like all that. And then Kisei's school, all the players' surnames have to do with rivers. And I was like, oh, and their jerseys are blue like a river, like water. I was like, I love authors when they play around with names and symbolism, and this author seems to be doing it a lot and is using like horoscopes and things like that. So I'm like, nope, this mangaka's right up my alley with their character choices. I'm gonna be all about it, because you can have so much fun doing like compatibility and you know, our characters like against each other because of their names and what elements they're tied to. It's a lot of fun, right? So speaking of fun, I'm really excited for these episodes. those were my notes that I had. I've really enjoyed reading your comments and talking in the Discord about these guys. These boys, I'm slowly growing really, really attached to them. I was a little worried about Kagame last episode because he was starting to get a little out of hand, but you just slug him in the face and he just goes right as rain. So, what the heck? But yeah, so I've wasted enough time. So we're going to be doing episodes 13, 13.5, which is called Bakaja Katane no Yo, which Baka means idiot, so basketball idiots maybe. It seems fitting. And then episode 14. So we're going to be doing those 3, which again will help me round out the season perfectly. So that should be great. But I'm excited, y'all, to see what's going to happen. I hope y'all are too. But in any case, we are going to start episode 13 of Kuroko's basketball, the basketball in which Kuroko plays. And we're going to do so here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Ready for that ding dong? I feel like I just ran a marathon. What was this week's episodes? What were this week's episodes? What was this? What was this? Because I didn't even take notes on the 3rd episode. I just paused it because I figured we'd go through it since it was the last one. But I took like a whole page on the episode 13 of that OVA. Oh. We are 14 episodes into this series. And I feel like I know these boys so well already, and I want to know more about them. I feel like I was mildly spoiled by that OVA, but I did my best to avoid focusing too much on the red and the pink-haired guys. I was like, no, I don't want to see them yet. We'll see them later. But, oh my god. Okay. It was Aomine it was the bigger light that was brought up. I was like, last set of episodes, y'all did a great job of not spoiling me, because I remember the last set of episodes, I was like, well, it can't be the dark blue haired guy. No, it is. And what the fudge? Okay, we're going to talk about Aomine, because I'm like, the multi-shipper in me went absolutely feral in this episode. Kagami, I love you, but Aomine, he needs to be fixed, and Kuroko wants to fix him. Oh god. So these episodes were great. I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all about the end cards because we only have 2. The OVA didn't have an end card. The end card for episode 13 was wonderful. It's Kuroko helping Midorima find a shirt and like put it up next to him to try it on. Episode 13 was glorious. It was great. And then the OVA was bonkers and heartwarming and heartbreaking. And then episode 14 was like a damn fever dream. So what is this drama? I have not watched a sports anime with so much shipping and drama in it. Oh my god. We'll talk about it in just a second. But that end card's really cute. But the end card for episode 14 was actually spoiled to me, unfortunately. Someone on Twitter was like, oh, you're posting end cards. Here's my favorite. And I was like, I don't want to see it if I haven't seen the characters yet. So I already saw this one coming, but I'm kind of glad that we got it out of the way now. So if you're watching and you're on Twitter, I do like to post the end cards on Twitter because I think they're fun. But just don't post your favorites till after I watch the episodes. Because I was like, crap. But I'm glad we got that out of the way now. It is a good end card. And Aomine and Kuroko. I think his voice actor is J-Ha's. I think Aomine's voice actor is the same one as J-Ha. It sounds like him. Which, if that's the case, the angst city that is coming, I'm sure. Okay, but we need to talk about these episodes. I'm just like... I almost brought Whiteboard Kun out. I was seriously thinking about it, but I was like, no, wait. I was like, usually I use Whiteboard Kun to break stuff down. I think I've got a pretty decent handle on it now. Like, by the time we get to the end, by the time we get to seasons 2 and 3, that may be a total different story, because we're getting so much with these characters already, but we need to just talk about these one episode at a time. So we can talk about episode 13 first. I took so many notes. So Kagame, he's back to normal. Like he had a little moment of selfishness, which I don't think. Here's the thing: Aomine's deal isn't selfishness. It's different, right? It is different. It's not the same as Kagame. What I like is that Kagame and Aomine are so similar, especially with Kuroko, so similar. However, I feel like Aomine and Kagami, their reasons for their strengths and drives are different. and I want to talk about it when we get to it. But Kagame's fine. You know, you just punch him a few times. He's kind of like a washing machine that's kind of shaking. You just hit it good, and then it gets back on track. So we know from Kagame. I love that Hyuga, he was like, at first it was such a fake out, because Hyuga was like, glad you're doing good, pal. Doing great. Glad you got over that. You were going to drag the team down, but glad you got over it. And Kagame's like, oh, well, see, I'm fine. He's like, no, I'm going to beat you up later. You baka. It's great. But it's 47-61 at the start of this episode, and Shitoku, I like that they're kind of curious why Siren isn't in utter despair at this point. But Kuroko, he's got a new pass he's been working on. But he needs somebody that has the strength of a Generation of Miracles player to catch it. And Kagami is the one. He is the one that can do it. He thinks Kagami can catch it. And it's like, okay. And Rico just analyzing him, thinking, I think you got 2 jumps left. Maybe more or less, but we're going to go with 2. Do 1 jump, the first shot Midorima makes in the 4th quarter, and save the other for a crucial moment in the game. And so I like that Takao. Takao's not going to let Kuroko out of his sight. He's watching over him. But Kuroko, I like that it took me a while when I had to go back and rewatch the episode to totally get it. But the thing of it is that Kuroko, he figured out very quickly that Takao was on him. And so instead of constantly trying to misdirect and Takao blocking it, he altered the way he was playing so that instead of misdirecting, he just kept close to Takao and got Takao used to this certain type of movement Kuroko was doing. And then when Kuroko had the chance to break away, he did. And then he was doing his movements differently and Takao couldn't keep up anymore. So it was a nice, it was like training Takao to do things a certain way and then faking him out. It was great. But we get this idea that from the coach with the Generation of Miracles, what I like about it is that he makes the comment that once you have a Generation of Miracles player on your team, the focus is going to be on them for the next several years. Because he tells the players, he's like, because they're like, oh, well, the 4th years are mad, or the 3rd years are mad that they're not getting to play as much, or they're having to like bow to the whim of a 1st year. And the coach is like, doesn't matter what the 3rd years think. We have a Generation of Miracles player, so now we're going to focus on them from now on, and we'll just have to deal with it. And I feel like that's why Kuroko left, because he was like, that's not the mentality he wanted anymore. He's like, no, we're a team. We play for fun. It's not just about winning. He's like, this is all you guys care about. And so he's like, that's not cool to me. So that's why he left. But I feel like that has been the case with all the Generation of Miracles players that have happened. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go. But that's one of the reasons why Kuroko was like, no. And Kagame, up until the point he got a little self-centered last episode, he was kind of in the same boat. Like, no, we're playing for fun. And he still maintains that play for fun. We'll talk about that in the restaurant, episode 14. But he still maintains that same attitude. But yeah, Kuroko punching the ball, punching the ball to Kagami. I'm like, your wrist, if you didn't do that just right, you'd hurt it. And Kagami has to be good enough to grab the ball from him. And then he was able to dunk it on Midorima. Just to dunk it on him. I love it. And the moment that Kuroko tells Midorima, he's like, 3-pointers are cool and all, but that guy's dunk had more spirit. And I'm like, I'm so torn, because it's like ship Kuroko with Kagami, ship Kuroko with Aomine. Aomine, Kagami, where are we going with this? And we'll talk about this as this episode's gone, but my shipper heart is torn because I love both of these ships. And I'm like, no! It's like X vibes. I'm just like, no. So yeah, okay. So we see, let's see, so dunk it on, he uses the second jump. So yeah, in order to dunk it on Midorima, Kagami used the second jump. And at first I was like, man, you used that really early on. I would have saved that, but it was needed to happen. And so, and then he pats Kuroko on the head and he's like, good job, buddy. And it's like, and then we cut to Aomine. Aomine in the shadows with the girl coach who is Momoi. Who the girl that is the coach. She looks like Cruel off of Seraph of the End. If you go look up Seraph of the End, look up Cruel. She looks exactly like her. She's a vampire. So I was like, that's interesting. Doesn't act like her though. Her personality is totally different. But yeah. And so I feel like she says she's in love with Kuroko. I feel like that's a front. That's just all a game. She's just doing that for funsies and saying it to get attention. I feel like she really likes Aomine. She likes him instead. And so I'm like, because she's like, oh, I have to follow him. I'm like, oh, you're his keeper. Okay. Yeah, she likes Aomine. She just isn't admitting it. She says she likes Kuroko, but man, Kuroko shoves her off. He friend zones her real quick. He's like, I'm not into you or girls in general. Kuroko shoves her to the side. All the other guys, Kagami, make note, Kagami doesn't care for her either. So I like that Kagami is not wooed by her, and neither is Kuroko. The other guys on the team are as heterosexual as it comes, but not Kuroko and Kagami. They care less about her and her big boobs. Man, she was making fun of Rico, and I was like, girl, at least Rico is not going to have back problems. She's going to be fine. You know, big boobs are not always a good thing. So, but yeah, Aomine is bored from winning. We'll talk about that with his character. He's bored. He comes across in episode 13 as super snobbish and super like arrogant. And so when you see him though when you see him in the OVA, he's totally different. And we'll talk about that with the OVA, but it's just, he's kind of corrupted and gone downhill. It's like, okay. And Kuroko wants to fix him. But yeah, so she says that she loves Kuroko, but she sticks with Aomine. So come on. And then when we get to the timeout, it's 76-78, and Shutoku calls a timeout. Now, the coach of Shutoku says he's figured it all out. Like, it's all been a bluff. He's figured everything out. Kagame can't jump more than twice. But I like that Rico's like, no, it was all dastardly planned to make you think that he only had 2 jumps left. And so I love that she had a plan and that she used Kuroko to counter in it, which was great, right? And then I wanted Hyuga to score the winning points. I did, because as much as I love Kuroko and Kagami teaming up and doing their thing, there's just something wonderful about Hyuga being the captain and getting to score those final points. It was so good in the game against Seiho, and then we did it here, and he even went like way, and they didn't draw so much attention to it. I'm like, he was way back, like he wasn't at the center line, but he was way far back from the 3, and he looks over and he's like, I've still got a passion for this sport, and he's looking directly at Rico. I totally ship Rico and Hyuga so hardcore. I'm like, they are such a ship. They're gonna get married one day and go off. It's already predetermined, I'm sure. I'm like, it's gonna be a thing. But yeah, they're such a pair. But then he shoots the 3. And I was like, okay, they've won. It's 82-81. They won. And the moment there was like 5 seconds left and Midorima got the ball, I was like, no. And I was like, he's gonna shoot a damn 3 and they're gonna win the game. Like, this series did a great job of faking it out. I really thought for a hot second that Midorima was gonna shoot. I was like, is he gonna miss? Is like something gonna happen? I thought is Kuroko gonna come up from behind and smack the ball, which he did. He just smacked it while it was down low when he crouched to fake out Kagami. And that line, I believed in you, it was like, oh my God. He was like, I believed in you and had faith that you would come back and jump one more time. And Kuroko was like, so did I. And I was like, this series, I think it is a great middle ground between Ace of the Diamond and Haikyuu. It's a great middle ground for me because Ace of the Diamond has so many like moments where you can ship characters, right? So many moments that like it takes the shipping that is possible like in Ace of the Diamond, and then takes because Ace of the Diamond has so many shippable moments, but you have to add a lot of context sometimes yourself. Sometimes not. There's a few shots that you're like, no, that's totally BL shipping, especially later on in the series, without spoiling anything. But with Haikyuu, I feel like all the characters there and all the setups there, but the audience has to fill it in too. And Kuroko's like a nice in-between. It's like, no, it's there. The shipping is there. The mangaka's like, yep, ship away. Here you go. Here's all these moments and subtext. And it's like, it's just, I'm having so much fun with this drama that is about to unleash with Aomine and Kagami. I'm just like so hyped up right now. But yeah, and everyone's smiling after they win. Like, Kagami's smiling, Kuroko has kind of like a little half smile. It's so good. And then what I liked was that Takao and Midorima on the court, they didn't cry. They didn't look like sour sports. Takao's like, well, let's go line up. Did what we could. Like, they take it like pros. And I was like, that's awesome. Like Midorima does go out in the rain later and has like the crying in the rain, so you can't tell he's crying moment. But on the court, they handle it very professionally. They do not pull a Sugawa and act a fool. They take it very professionally and they just handle it like pros. I like it. But then he does do the stereotypical thing in the rain. And then Momoi calls. oh my God, calls him. And I love I love their phones are the same color that they're associated with. So hers is pink and Aomine has her phone, but Midorima's is green. And his screensaver was Sakuragi. He was like doing double luck. He had the actual Sakuragi and it was on his phone. I hope he changes his wallpaper with every lucky item he has. I hope he does that. But so good. And then, yeah, so she calls and then Aomine is like saying, oh, who won? Did you win or did Kuroko's team win? And then Kisei is like, well, they have to play Aomine and he's strong. And in the moment with episode 13, before I put in my notes, before I even watched the OP or episode 14, I put in my notes that Aomine seems like he's not into mind games like Midorima. He's just really super strong. No, he is kind of into mind games, but he's definitely more pragmatic and just, I'm strong. Whereas Midorima had like a technique to it. And it's like, okay. So this OP, what the hell? This OVA. There was a new OP. I did not watch it. I turned my head away. I was like, oh no. I'll be honest, I felt a little uneasy watching the OVA for like 5% of it because anytime we had the purple-haired guy and the red-haired guy come on screen, I honestly zoned out. I didn't want to watch them because I want to be surprised when we see them in the show. I felt a little uncomfortable with them on the screen. I was like, oh, I don't know. This feels uncomfortable. I don't feel like I should be watching them yet. So I tried to avoid them. So I'm not going to have much to say about them because I wasn't paying attention to them. But I did not watch the new OP. I was like, oh no. So when we get to it, it also said episode 41.5. So I hope I watched the right thing. I feel like I did because I looked at the watch order and that was the thing. So we're going to hope it was right. It was right. We're going to hope it was right. Okay. But yeah. So Aomine, Daiki Aomine. And we start out with him, obviously on Teiko's first string, and Kuroko was on their third string, which makes sense. He was like, they have 100 players, so they had a first string, second string, and third string. And so Kuroko, I like that Momoi thought that there was like a ghost in the gym because she didn't even notice him, and Aomine stumbles across him. And it's like, there's instant chemistry between Aomine and Kuroko, like instant chemistry, where you're like, oh, you guys. And Aomine, with the moment he says, I want to play you one-on-one, I was like, that's kind of like Kagami. And Aomine is very strong, and he's waiting on a worthy opponent. I can't imagine who that could be. Although at the end of episode 14, Kagami's still injured, so it's like, can you really base everything off that? But there's a psychological thing going on there, but we'll get to it. But yeah, he started out, it's crazy to see how Aomine started out. He was so kind and optimistic and easygoing and like happy, which is a little different than Kagami. So Kagami always has this kind of like sourpuss expression to him. He's more like a cat. He's kind of like all the time, but he likes a challenge and he loves basketball and he's kind of like really super hyped up for basketball. So even though Kagami's kind of a sourpuss, he is still like really super nice and dedicated to the sport. Whereas Aomine seemed like he was a little bit softer than Kagami, like a little bit nicer and kinder and softer around the edges. And he just instantly like becomes friends with Kuroko. They're doing like the fist bumps, and Kuroko's even about to quit at one point because he doesn't think he's going to be able to ever play with Aomine. He doesn't think it's possible. And Aomine's like, hey, don't give up. He's like, yeah, you may never get to play with me on the court. He's like, but if you give up, then you'll never have a chance then, but at least you might have a chance if you keep going. And he encourages him to keep playing. And the part in the restaurant where he gets the burgers and Kuroko has a shake, it's exactly like Kagami. So I feel kind of weird about it because on the one hand, they feel like exes. It feels like Aomine and Kuroko were like a thing, and then they broke up when they decided to go to different schools, and now they're kind of exes, and now Amine's like, we're enemies now. And it's like, ugh. And Kuroko's like, I feel like Kuroko still wants to be friends with Aomine, maybe more, but he can't because of the situation, how Aomine is personality-wise. And he's with Kagami now. But I almost feel bad for Kagami a little bit, especially by the end of episode 14, and we'll talk about it then, because it's going through the motions, and it almost feels like Kagami's like the new Aomine to Kuroko, and I don't want Kagami to be the new anything. So I'm hoping that in future episodes that Kagami maybe brings that up, especially after episode 14, and again, we'll talk about it then, And Kuroko's like, no, you're you. I like you for you, and not because you're kind of like Aomine. I hope that's the case, because I'd feel bad for Kagami if Kuroko was just, he had that faith because it reminded him of Aomine, because I don't think they're the same people. They have a ton of similarities, but they are different in many ways. So Kuroko, but the two of them, Kuroko and Aomine, have such good chemistry in the OVA. Kuroko's like, oh, you're amazing. He's like, no, you're amazing, Kuroko. And he's like, you like basketball more than anyone. And it's like, oh, just ship. Like, I took the champagne bottle and I broke it against the Aomine and Kuroko ship and let it set sail at this point, right? But Aomine, the way that they animate him and his fakes are so good. Like, he just like spins around as the fake out and everything, and the fake layup. I love when people do like the fake layup. It's my jam. So I was like already on board with Aomine, and the fact that he's like he's just strong and he's got skills and rhythm and coordination. It's wonderful. But he wants a character. He's a character that wants a challenge. And I like that in the flashback we see Midorima. Midorima's the same. Midorima's not changed. I love when he has the Febreze and he's just like spraying everything. They're like, oh, they have their dirty clothes around. He's like, what? Like, I love how just on edge Midorima is the whole time. It's great. And then Kisei's the same. Kisei's the same as he's always been, working with Kuroko. And then I like that they all show up at the gym, and they don't notice Kuroko at first, but Aomine is the one to point him out. And then they start playing with him and realize just how good they play with Kuroko. So that sets off the whole Generation of Miracles things. And it's because of Aomine, really, that Kuroko got to the first string and got to play with Teiko. It's because of Aomine that Kuroko moved his way up. So there's that. He helped raise them up as a player. Now, the redhead and the purple hair guy, I'll talk about them briefly. Like I said, I did not focus on them very much because I felt like it was spoilery. So I was like, I'm not going to pay attention to them. I'm just going to focus on Aomine because he's our main guy right now in the OP. He's the guy we're focusing on next, along with Momoi. I feel like I can talk about Momoi because she's in episode 14. But these are my notes on purple-haired guy and red-haired guy. Purple-haired guy seems like he's like super chill, like totally lax, like what are we even doing? And just like he seems like he reminds me of Space Jam, where the one alien becomes the center and he's just like what, guys? Like that seems like the purple-haired one. He just seems like the stereotypical center that is just like super tall and super strong. He's just like, oh, let's just chill, guys, and go with it. I don't know anything else about him. That's all I want to know right now, but that's my first impression. The red-haired guy, my first impression with him is that he terrifies me. Because I have a feeling him and Momoi are siblings. He called her by her first name, which she's their manager, so maybe that was the case anyway. But I feel like they're related. They both have like the reddish eyes and like the pink and red hair. And his hair is more magenta than red. So that's interesting. I don't want confirmation if they're siblings or not. We'll find that out when we do. But the red-haired guy terrifies me because he's kind of seems like a masochist. And I say that because like during one of the games, we'll talk about the red-haired guy just briefly. During one of the games like that happens later on in the series, they're up like 150 to 80. Like they're winning by so much and by 70 points. And the red-haired one looks over to Momoi and he's like, well, how many points has Aomine scored this game? And she's like, only 36. And in one of the previous games, they said he scored like 80, which is ungodly. And he was like, oh, we'll have the ball go to him more. So he's the captain. We found out the red-haired one's the captain. Okay, the short one's the captain. And he's like, we'll have the ball get taken more to him. He's like, we want to destroy them. So he seems a little bit sadistic and crazy. And I'm terrified of him. He'll probably be the last one we see, right? He'll probably be the last one. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't get good vibes from him, especially, but I guess we'll see, right? I don't want to know anything more about the redhead or the purple-haired one now. Please don't tell me. Keep it hush-hush. We'll meet them when we meet them, right? But everyone gets like, they get all like upset and demotivated around Ao after a while, after Aomine, that he just isn't motivated anymore. Like none of the players he competes against give him a challenge, and they all just call him a monster and they give up. And so he starts skipping practice. And then he tells Kuroko he's going to skip games, and Kuroko's like, why? And he's just like, it's just not fun anymore. Like, and I hate that mentality. And I think that's the big difference between Kagame and him. Because there was like somebody on the speech team that he like won an event his freshman year, and his sophomore year, he's like, well, I'm not going to do that event anymore because I've already won it, so I'm going to give someone else a chance. And I was like, well, you're a dick. So I was like, yeah, because that's not the mentality you should have, right? Like, no, you should keep doing it, and because you never know what'll happen the second year. Maybe you'll win again a second time. Maybe you won't. But that's not the right mentality to have, and it's like, it's kind of insulting to people who put in just as much work and you just happen to beat them, but it kind of is definitely belittling. And I think Kuroko kind of has that same mentality when he's like, I'm just going to skip games because like I'm too strong, so what's the point? And Kuroko says, it's all I have to keep up with you all. He's like, I'm putting in everything I have to keep up with you guys. And you just saying you're going to skip a game because it's beneath you? He's like, that's insulting to me. That makes it seem like I'm like, why should I try? Like, you could tell Kuroko's really upset by that. He's like, what is your deal? And the thing of it is that Aomine, if he's not challenged or if he doesn't face a strong opponent, then he just gives up. And that is like Kagame to a sense. Because when we first met Kagami, he was like, I don't like playing against weak people. I only want to play against strong people, and I like a challenge. So there is a similarity there between Kagami and Aomine, but Aomine, I think Kagami's big deal is that he wanted to get stronger so that he didn't have to rely on others and that he could lead the team and he could be on equal terms with the rest of the team, that he wasn't lagging behind. That was his whole motivation. And then it just kind of like festered and he got like drunk on that power. With Aomine, it's like, that's not the case with him. He's not concerned about the team or being relied upon or being needed to be relied upon. He's more concerned about just finding somebody who's as strong as he is. So there is a little bit of a difference there. And I'm hoping that Kuroko points that out or has noticed that difference, because I don't know how I'll feel if Kagami is just like Kuroko's Aomine 2.0. I don't know how I feel about that. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes down in this series. But yeah. So Momoi God, it's crazy. And so then, and at this point, like after all is said and done, what I liked too is that you can definitely see the team dynamics with Teiko, and you can see how they are just a bunch of divas playing together. They're a bunch of really talented divas, but there's not that camaraderie that you get the sense of like you do a Siren. And I think Kuroko likes that camaraderie, right? So then we have Imayoshi Shoichi show up, who is the second year now and maybe a third year for Toho, which is the team that scouts Aomine and gets him to come over. And Shoichi, he's like, you just seem like a guy that you're not even going to try unless you're winning. He's like, we don't want a guy like that. We want somebody that's going to do the best. And he kind of just like, he does reverse psychology and kind of just hooks Aomine in that moment. And I like that he told the coach, he was like, I don't care to sacrifice some things to get him to play for us because I know we'll be good with him. And it's like, okay. And then when he's up on the bridge looking down and we conveniently see on the street there's a couple that walks by as Kuroko comes into focus, I'm like, you couldn't be more obvious. But it's like a breakup. It's like a breakup when they're at the pool. I wanted to know what Kuroko said to Aomine. I wanted to know. And I feel like that even though that's an OVA from later on, I feel like we're going to find out what he said to Aomine. We just probably won't find it out until the end of the game that they face them at. And I'm like, damn it. But yeah, he said they basically parted ways at the pool. Said the next time they'd talk, they'd be enemies. And it's like, okay, sure thing. So then we go to episode 14, which was a fever dream. And Midorima, and I will say that it's just like, it feels like Aomine is a totally different person than he was at the start of the OVA. He's like, the past is irrelevant. And I'm like, damn, but Kuroko doesn't seem to think so. Because Kuroko and Momoi, they both want Aomine to go back to the way he was. Like when he was a kind person that just loved basketball and wanted to play with people that loved it too. Like they want him to go back to being that, but he's become this monster that just gets bored because he's won so much. And he's like, the past is irrelevant. and says that we're enemies now. We're exes, baby. Him and Kuroko broke up, but Kuroko's like, I want to fix him. It's like, this episode was just such drama. At first it wasn't drama. At first it was hilarious and great and like a fanfic fever dream, and then it became just freaking angst. And I'm like, no. So I just like Midorima hangs up on Momoi. He has no use for her. And then everybody is just exhausted. They do rock, paper, scissors to see who's going to carry Kagami to the restaurant. And it's Kuroko, but he can't carry Kagami because he's too big, so he just drug him through the mud. It's amazing. This restaurant that they're at, though, I have never been to a restaurant like this. It sounds interesting. It's Okonomi Yaki, and it's like the grill, and they have like the little tiny spatulas, and they're picking the meat and stuff off of the grill. It's interesting. I feel like that would not, I'm a big eater, so I feel like that would not be enough food for me. I would be like Kagami. I would want like the whole damn omelet or whatever it is. I'm like, bring it out here. But, oh my gosh. And you can tell it's Kisei and Kasamatsu like from a distance, which is hilarious. And she's like, oh, there's so many of you. Man, have been there. Like, if you've ever traveled with a team during a competitive event and a big gaggle of you show up, the restaurant people are like, huh. And so we've often had to split up too. But I love that instantly he's like, oh, I'm sorry, you're too heavy. And instantly Kagami notices Kisei and Kasamatsu. Like, they notice each other. It's great. And he's like, oh, Kisei and Kasamatsu. And Kasamatsu's like, what, no honorifics? And Kisei's like, hey, OT3, get on over here. I love it. I love that Kisei's like, we don't need honorifics. You boys get right over here. It's like, I love their dynamic. They're my favorite. They're my original OT3 in this series, and I love them to pieces. And I love that they sit there, and then everybody's just kind of like Kasamatsu's the one that didn't want them to sit together at first, but then he's the one like sitting there eating like, oh, whatever. And then it just goes off the rails. Because Midorima and Takao show up. The rest of their team left them because Midorima's crying in the rain. And so they show up at the restaurant. And I love that Midorima is immediately like, bye, no. And Takao's like, and then it rains so hard they have to come back in. But conveniences of all conveniences, let me tell you. He's like, are you Kaijo's Kasamatsu? And Takao is like, oh my God, I saw you in Basketball Monthly. It's like, you're a nationally famous as a strong point guard, which is what Takao is. He's like, oh wow. He's like, yeah. He's like, I play the same position. I'd love to hear your stories. Do you mind if we join you? And he's like, let's go talk over there. And he conveniently shoved Midorima in with Kagami and Kisei and Kuroko. So now it's like, Kagami is fourth wheeling on a Generation of Miracles reunion, which is, it's so good. Again, it's great, and Kagami's kind of like a Generation of Miracles player that never was, right? And Takao totally did it on purpose. He totally did. And Kuroko's like, well, this is awkward. And they're all just sitting there, just like the Skittles, taste the rainbow, which I guess Kagami could be part of the Skittles too, because the fuchsia-haired one doesn't really have red hair. It's more like fuchsia. It's more like a hot pink, only a little bit darker. And then, yeah, Rico's like, this is exciting. I'm like, I'm with you, girl. I'm with you. And then Kasamatsu's like, you wanted this to happen, didn't you? And Takao's like, what? Of course not. It's like, yeah, you did. You wanted your BF to go and be with his buddies, right? And reconnect. And Midorima's like, I hate this. He's so tsundere. But Kuroko's like, I guess we should order. He like breaks the awkward silence. He's like, why don't we order something? That sounds like something that friends do at dinner. He's like, I'm hungry. And then Kisei's like, well, I'm already full, so I'm good where I am. And then I love that Kagami says, and Midorima is like such a bitch. Because Kisei's like, well, I just ate with Kasamatsu, so I'll just sit here and you guys can order what you want. Perfectly fine. Midorima's like, I'm surprised you can eat that shit. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, what a bitch. Like, just get yourself some water, sir, if you don't want to eat the food. And he's like, could we get squid balls, pork balls, and mixed balls? And he's like, why are you getting so much? An octopus and kimchi. He's like, you're ordering too much. What kind of incantation is that? And Kuroko's like, no, he's going to eat it all himself. He's a bottomless pit. I like that Kuroko corrects them with like his innocent puppy dog face. He's like, no, he's going to eat it all. It's fine. And then they're like, what? Is he really even human? And yeah, his giant, massive steak of food is so much more than Kuroko's tiny little thing, the rest of Kisei's, and then the one that Midorima got is like just average. Yeah. And Midorima's just like, his angry frog face. I'm like, he's trying his best. It's so good. And Kisei's like, now, let's not be a sore loser. It's fine. And he's like, well, why are you acting this way? And Kisei's like, well, yeah, I lost to them myself, but he's like, I'm excited to play them at Inner High. And I like the idea that at first Midorima says that Kisei looks different. But the reality is, he's like, you look like how you used to play. He says, you've changed a little. And he's like, really? Are you sure? He says, your eyes are strange. But the thing of it is, and I love that Kagane is, meanwhile, Kagane's like throwing the thing up in the air. It's great. And it lands and like gets everywhere. And Hyuga yells at him. It's wonderful. And he's like, well, since we played against Kurokichi. And he's like, I've been thinking that it's pretty fun playing basketball with the guys from Kaijo. So yeah, Kuroko's fixed their hearts. And he's helping them realize that it's fun to play basketball and get back to their old ways, the ways that they were before they were corrupted by winning 3 championships in a row. And he's like, oh, he's like, no. He's like, you are still the same. He's like, I was mistaken. You've just reverted to a state before our 3 consecutive championships. It's like, wow, way to humble brag there, Midorima. But yeah, it is true. Like Kuroko has helped Kisei see like the fun in basketball and to enjoy it. And so it's just kind of like, it's funny, the irony is the Generation of Miracles, they were these 3-time national champions, but they all kind of lost their way because of that. And now it's like they're all getting back to their roots, right? And Midorima is aware of it. And then Kuroko and Kisei is just like so happy there. He's like, no, he's like, I'm totally fine with this. My heart has been healed by Kuroko and we're all good now. And Kuroko's like, but he says, we were all like that back then. He's like, Midorima, don't act like you weren't. He's like, we were all in a better place before winning all these championships. And Midorima's like, well, how you change is up to you. So Midorima is like, I made this choice to be the way that I am, to be a grumpy sourpuss, and I'm going to take charge with it and take responsibility for it. So it's fine. He's like, I'm not playing basketball to have fun. And Kisei's like, okay. And I like that Kagame is like, you guys think too much. Which is cool. Kagame's like, you guys think too much. He's like, no. He's like, what's there to it? He's like, no. He's like, of course we play basketball because it's fun. Why else wouldn't we play? And Midorima's like, what'd you just say to me? How dare you speak like you understand when you know nothing at all? And then before he can get any further, Takao throws the entire ball onto Midorima. And I love that Katsumatsu's like, and then Midorima's like, we're done here. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, so Midorima does have a point. He's like, Kagami is the outsider, right? Kagami is the outsider. He does not know the history with the Generation of Miracles, which, although after this encounter with Aomine, I'm wondering if Kagami is going to be asking Kuroko about it, being like, what was happening with y'all? And so Kuroko's going to be like, well, I kind of tried to tell you about it, but things were kind of sketch. And so then, of course, he's like, Kagami, let me tell you one thing. There are 2 members of the Generation of Miracles in Tokyo. Myself and a man named Aomine Daiki. You'll face him in the Championship League. He's the same type of player as you. Yeah, the OVA makes it sound like, yeah, very clear that they're very similar. And then Kuroko and Kisei don't deny it. They're both like, yeah, they're pretty similar. Oh my God. And he's like, I don't get it. He's like, but he's strong too, right? And Kuroko's like, yes, he's strong. But his style of basketball, I don't like it. Which is so crazy because the OVA makes it seem like they were such good teammates. And then Aomine lost his way and just changed for the worse, and Kuroko doesn't like it anymore. And he couldn't. So back in the last set of episodes, when Kagami was starting to get full of himself, Kuroko punching him makes so much sense because he's like, no, he's like, I already went through that with Aomine and it broke my heart. I don't want to go through it again with you. Don't be like him. And so the question is, now that he's faced Aomine face to face, is he going to ask Kuroko about him? What's he going to do about it? I'm probably not going to be able to wait to watch the next set of episodes. He's like, well, do your best. And he's like, Midorima-kun, He's like, let's play again sometime. And Kuroko's so happy. He's like, let's play again, Midorima-kun. And he's like, yeah, of course we will. And I'll beat you that time. So then, yeah. But he has like a little smile on his face with Takao, like as they leave. And then Kuroko finds a puppy. Because why wouldn't we? Why? He's like, oh, I found a dog. Just, Kuroko, we can't leave you anywhere without you running around finding boxes of puppies everywhere. Okay. Which I don't blame him. He's all like Oliver and company here in this little box that probably said free puppy. This little husky mix that looks adorable. And then I like that it's weird. Kagami is terrified of dogs. Rico's all about it. Rico's like, look at this shit and how cute this is. We're taking it with us. Let's do it, team mascot. Let's go. She's instantly about it. It's great. And Kuroko doesn't even move. She's just like, he's fluffy and cute. I love that they call him player number 2. Player 2. The puppy being called player 2 is absolutely amazing. He's like, coach, calm down. And then she's like, oh my god, it has the same eyes as Kuroko. Yep. So, anyway, they decide that they're going to take this dog, which, why wouldn't we? And so, but Kagami's afraid of dogs. So, I am curious. I am very curious as to why Kagami's afraid of dogs. If we'll ever get any answers to that, or if it's just going to be that he's afraid of dogs and there's a reason for it. There has to be a reason, right? I feel like that's going to come out in the wash later, but Kagami doesn't like dogs. And it's totally cool. But they keep the dog anyway, even though Kagami's kind of terrified of it. And she's like, okay. And bless his heart, poor Kagami. And then Kuroko's like, Kagami-kun. He's like, don't say that you don't like the dog. And then he's like, don't look at me with those eyes. It's so freaking cute, though. Yeah, no, player 2 is great. I love the addition to the team. It's wonderful. So then they go to the pool to do the squats in the pool. I liked that. I thought that was a really clever thing. And I wondered at first why they focused on Rico's bathing suit. I was like, why is that a big deal? They made extra attention to point to her chest on the swimsuit. I was like, why does that matter? But then when Momoi shows up, I'm like, oh, because Momoi is the big busty girl that comes in and all the guys are oogling over, except for Kuroko and Kagami. They're the only two that don't oogle over her. And so, makes sense, right? But my thing is about the whole thing with Kagami facing off against Aomine. Kagami is not at full strength. He is still recovering. So I feel like the one thing that could be in Kagami's advantage is that Aomine practiced against him when he was not at full strength. And it wasn't like Rico told Momoi that he was injured or anything. So I think that there's something to that when we actually face them in a real game, that will come into play. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so Momoi showing up though, she just showed up to make a scene. She showed up. I love Kuroko's just dead in the pool. Just dead. Yeah, but Momoi showed up just to throw it in their faces that she knows all about them. Yeah, she wanted to make sure that they understood that she knew who each of them were, what their positions were, what they were known for, that she's told her whole team about that. Like, girl has done her research, and she wanted to make sure that y'all knew that as she shows up in her big busty swimsuit. And Kuroko's like, oh, and she just self-proclaims herself as his girlfriend. And they're like, oh, you have a girlfriend? And he's like, no, she's my manager. Like, not at all. Not the case whatsoever. And she's like, oh, well, and they question why she would even like someone like Kuroko. And she says, well, he may be shy and timid, but he's such a different person when he plays. Which, fair enough. Kuroko definitely could see that. I could see that. And it's funny because it's hilarious because Kuroko is a different player on the court than he is off the court. And his VA plays the voice of Raichi from Ace of the Diamond. And Raichi in that series is totally different off the field than he is on the field. So it's kind of funny that those same type of characters are played by the same VA. But her whole reason for liking him is because they're eating popsicles. They didn't give their manager a popsicle. I was like, Generation of Miracles, give your manager a damn popsicle. They're probably like $1. Dude, what are you doing? So she wanted a popsicle, and Kuroko had a stick that won and gave it to her, and she fell in love. Like you do. But yeah, I was like, man, these Generation Miracles, they really don't get it, do they? They're just not very nice to her. And so yeah, they're like, wow, that's why you like him, huh? Okay. And she laments that she was going to go to the same school as him, but she decided not to, and we find out because she had to follow Aomine. And I like that Kuroko's just like, hey, can you tone it down? You're being a little too loud. And so then I guess that Kagami got tired of sitting there listening to everybody, and he went to go practice by himself. He says the pain's mostly gone, but it still gets him. Yeah, I'm like, no. There's a character in Slam Dunk that goes through the same thing. They try to play while they're not feeling well, and it just does not work, and they've got to take it easy. And I feel like Kagami's going to have to do the same. He's going to have to take it easy, or he's going to be out of commission. And then, of course, Aomine shows up. And Kagami's like, I'm not going to play anybody until I know their name. He's like, I don't take kindly to guys that challenge me without me even knowing who they are. And Aomine is kind of a bitch. She's like, well, I'm not asking you how you feel. If I tell you to play, you play. And his attitude is just so different than it was when we first see him in the OVA. It was so different. And it's kind of sad. I get why Kuroko was like, you're not how you used to be. But, oh my gosh. We cut back to the idea. He's like, I'm Aomine Daike, and I want to play you. He's like, nobody's expecting a real match. I'm just testing you. And so Kagami's like, I know the Generation Miracles is full of guys who are full of themselves, but you're exceptional even among them. He's like, I'm going to crush you. And it's like, oh, Kagami, honey. And so then we're down to Momoi and Kuroko talking alongside player 2. And she's like, oh, well, we're going to see you in the championship league, right? And she's like, oh, I did say that, didn't I? She's like, the next time we meet, we'll be on different benches. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah. She's like, I watched your video against Midorima. It was a great game. She's like, Kagami-kun. And he's like, Kagami-kun plays just like he used to play. And Kuroko's like, yes. And I'm like, oh, because I feel like I'm so torn because I like the idea that Kuroko wants to have his friend back. I like the idea that Kuroko wants Aomine to be like he used to be and to not be so like conceited and like just corrupted. He's like, I want him to be like he was before when we were friends, and for him to go back to that state because he was so good then. Like, I want him to do that. But there's a part of me that's like, I don't want Kuroko to try to push Kagami to beat Aomine just so he can get Aomine back, because that doesn't seem fair to Kagami, right? It doesn't seem fair to him if Kuroko's just using Kagami to get back to Aomine. It doesn't feel right. And God, the moment we realized that the phrase about the shadows that Kuroko said to Kagami was the same phrase said to him with Aomine, and Aomine throws it back to Kagami, I was like, oh no! Because now Kagami's going to be like, did you just steal that phrase from this other guy you used to play with? Like, what's up with that? The drama. I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be a big drama fest, isn't it? Isn't it? Oh my God. But yeah, they said after watching the play, we have to make this our standard course. And yeah, it's the redhead that's making the calls. He's like, Tetsu and him can't agree on anything, but they play basketball together so well. And Kuroko's like, I just want him to go back to being the way he was. And if we can beat him, if that'll happen, we should do it. So I guess the Toho team is fine with Momoi just being there. And when she leaves, they don't care. But we get Shoichi showing up again. We also get Sakurai. Sakurai is a sweet little bean that's on their team. And he's freaking cute. And he's like, oh, yes, I'm so sorry. And they're like, what? We didn't say anything. He's like, I could have stopped him since I'm in his class, but I couldn't. Like, he was lamenting because he couldn't stop Aomine from going off on his own. He seems like a little cinnamon bun, and I want to put him in my pocket. He's so cute. Little Sakurai. I already like him a lot. Bless his heart. He's like, I'm really sorry I'm alive. I was like, why? Bless him. I'm like, bless this little kid's bones. Oh, my God. I feel so bad for him. Sakurai has already won my heart. I love it. It's so freaking cute. I'm like, okay, I'm here for you. But Momoi, she's like, I wish he would play like he used to. He started playing basketball by himself. And isolated from the team, I thought that losing would change him, but he's not been able to lose. He doesn't lose. He just keeps going. Even by himself, no one can stop him. Well, that's terrifying. And then Kuroko's like, so if we stop him, he's like, I know Aomine-kun's strength, but I won't be fighting him alone. He's like, I promise I'll beat Aomine-kun. So, okay, Kuroko did say he would beat him to get him back to the way that he was, because he knows that that's what Momoi wants as well. He's like, for your sake, Momoi, and for his, I'll beat him and knock him down a peg like he needs to be knocked down. But Kagame's facing him right now, and when that whole light line is shoved back in his face, oh, it's hard. That's brutal. So brutal. And I'm like, ugh. So yeah. Let the multi-shipping begin. I do want Aomine to go back to the way he was, because the way he was in the OVA was freaking precious, and I loved that. But I want him to go back to being that way, but then I'm like, my Kagame shipping heart with Kuroko is like, I want to support Kagame with Kuroko, but I also want Aomine to go back to the way he was and bond up his friendship with Kuroko. So, what's a shipper to do? But I really loved these episodes. They were so good. They were so good. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Oh my God. I'm so curious to know what y'all thought down below. Please no spoilers, especially about the 2 Generation of Miracles players we have not played yet. Please no spoilers about them. I know we'll get to them eventually. I don't want to know their names. Don't want to know nothing about them. We'll get to them when we get to them. But I am like really curious to know your thoughts down below. But oh my God, y'all. I'm ecstatic with these episodes, and I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to wait till I watch 15, 16, and 17. But we'll see soon. In the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Kuroko's basketball. Bye.